In 1950, Caracas had more skyscrapers than almost any city in Latin America. Venezuelan citizens enjoyed a standard of living that surpassed people in Spain, Greece, and much of Western Europe. The currency was so strong that locals regularly flew to Miami just for weekend shopping. This chart compares the proven oil reserves of leading energy producers. Venezuela sits on a geological jackpot. It has larger reserves than Saudi Arabia, Iran, or anywhere else on the planet, 300 billion barrels. For a nation of its size, that essentially amounts to a limitless, permanent supply of the global economy's most valuable commodity. Yet today, that exact same country has watched its economy shrink by nearly 80% in just over a decade. Roughly a quarter of the entire population, nearly 8 million people, have fled to neighboring countries on foot. And the political consequence of this economic freefall peaked in January of 2026. In a 2-hour military operation, United States Special Forces captured Venezuela's sitting president and extracted him to a Navy amphibious assault ship to face criminal trial in New York. Venezuela didn't lose a war, and it wasn't destroyed by a natural disaster. What happened here is a highly studied macroeconomic phenomenon. Discovering massive natural wealth is often the exact trigger that breaks a nation from the inside out. Under normal conditions, a healthy government operates under a very simple incentive structure. To survive, it has to collect taxes from its citizens, which means it has to build a competitive economy that actually generates taxable wealth. When a state-owned oil monopoly enters the picture, the government gains a massive revenue pipeline from outside the country. It no longer needs its people to generate wealth. Its primary survival incentive stops being public service, shifting entirely toward controlling the oil tap. This is the root of the resource curse. The decay starts the exact moment a government achieves financial independence from the very people it is supposed to represent. In the early 2000s, Hugo Chavez used a massive surge in global oil prices to fund sweeping, state-run social programs. Poverty fell, and he became wildly popular with the working class. But his strategy required total control of the state oil company, PDVSA. When the company's management and workers went on a national strike in 2003, Chavez responded by firing nearly 19,000 highly experienced executives, engineers, and technicians. He replaced those experts with political loyalists. That single decision crippled the institutional competence of the nation's only productive asset. Complex, technical decisions were now driven purely by political ideology. You can run an oil company incompetently for a while, provided global commodity prices stay high. A literal fire hose of incoming cash can easily mask the terrifying reality of total institutional rot. This graph shows global oil prices from 2014 onward. Within 18 months, the price of a barrel plummeted from over $110 to under $30. The revenue fire hose vanished. Stripped of its only real income source, the government faced a choice: drastically cut domestic spending or order the central bank to start printing money to cover the gap. Ultimately, they chose to print. Printing money without underlying economic value has a strictly mathematical consequence. By 2018, Venezuela's annual inflation rate surpassed 1 million%. People began weighing cash on kitchen scales because counting the individual bills took too long. A month's minimum wage dropped to under $2. Domestic supply chains evaporated, hospitals ran out of medicine, and basic goods disappeared entirely from the shelves. The economic collapse dragged the political system down with it, leading to a decade of international sanctions, extreme isolation, and ultimately the unprecedented U.S. military raid that captured Nicolas Maduro in early 2026. Hyperinflation is never an accident or a natural disaster. It is the guaranteed mathematical end state of a government trying to print its way out of the resource curse. We know this collapse is entirely avoidable because we have counterexamples. Norway discovered enormous offshore oil reserves, but entirely avoided the trap that caught Venezuela. Norway's solution was structural. They built a sovereign wealth fund that strictly separates volatile oil revenues from the day-to-day government budget, preventing politicians from spending windfall cash to buy short-term popularity. Today, under acting President Delcy Rodriguez, the U.S. has eased sanctions and foreign oil companies are returning. The mathematical result is a sharp, immediate rebound in Venezuela's oil production and revenue, but economists are urging extreme caution. This recent GDP spike is primarily driven by idle capacity reactivation. The government is simply turning neglected infrastructure back on. They haven't fixed the deep structural decay beneath it. Natural resources do not determine a country's economic fate. They act as an amplifier. If you have strong, transparent institutions, resource wealth will build permanent prosperity. But if your institutions are weak, that same wealth will inevitably drive a brutal cycle of temporary booms and total collapse.